Holla! Episode 10 of Content Marketing Commute. It's a monumental. Episode 10, double figures, everyone. What a feeling. And we're out here on my morning walk, my commute. Today on episode 10 of Content Marketing Commute. On an episode really focused on one specific thing that Lindsay King in last week's episode talked about. If you haven't listened to last week's episode yet, oh, look at that truck. Bit of noise. Hustle and bustle here in the little town. If you haven't listened to last week's episode with Lindsay King, it was fantastic. It is absolutely jam-packed with interesting insights on content, the way it integrates with brand, content marketing and brand. They need to be best friends. Also, all sorts of chat about B2C versus B2B marketing, the differences, the similarities, what B2B is sort of borrowing from B2C, and all sorts of things like that. As well as what I found really interesting, the sense that maybe thinking of yourself as a B2B marketer is not sort of the most insightful way to think about it, because depending on sales cycle, depending on the product, there's actually a huge amount of crossover between B2B and B2C in content marketing. But anyway, today here on this episode, this format that I call About Last Week, I want to talk to you about something that Lindsay mentioned, and a reminder in this kind of episode, we dive into one particular thing from last week, from our interview episode with a guest, and I just, by myself, have a quick chat about it to dive a bit deeper on that specific thing, right? And she did talk about so many things, but there was just one little tiny snippet in her It's All Backwards segment. You're also going to have to watch last week's episode if you want to watch or listen to it, if you want to know what that's all about. But anyway, one very small part in that, she mentioned the sense of content teams being sometimes referred to as a production agency within the company, or what I've heard of often as a content factory. And that's something I want to address today and talk about, is the sense that content teams are seen as a kind of factory to produce content at the request of the business, right? And personally, I have a big problem with this because it runs kind of against everything I believe to be about great content marketing. So first of all, what are we talking about here? Essentially, is when the content team is positioned as just a team in its corner to take requests from the business. We need this article about this thing. We need this collateral for sales. And the content team is asked to just produce that. It's not a case of collaboration. There's not really strategy involved. It's just a case of, this is what we need. Go and get it done. Oftentimes, this whole thing around production and producing content, and even being labeled as a content creator, I kind of have a problem with, because it's only a very, very small part of the job. Done well, content creation is just one part of a myriad of things that great content marketers do, right? Hey, just wanted to let you know that here at Content Marketing Commute, we're more than a podcast. We're actually an online community as well on Substack. So come on over to the Substack, link in description, www.contentmarketingcommute.com, and subscribe. You'll get full access to bonus episodes, including the sit-down format, an extra 10 minutes of audio content recorded at the end of podcast episodes with our expert guests. You'll get full access to content marketing templates and how-to videos. This one's exciting, access to the Content Marketing Book Club. Yes, a book club, a discussion forum on a new marketing book every month, and the ability to comment on publications and discuss key topics with other expert European content marketers. We all know doing content in Europe is different from our friends around the world, especially over the pond in the US. So this is the community for you if you are a European content marketer looking to level up your game, come and join my Substack, Content Marketing Commute, the online community for content marketers in Europe. For only €5 per month or €50 a year, you'll get access to all of that and the ability to share learnings and learn from other experts in this area. Head on over www.contentmarketingcommute.com. And I think a big part of what it comes down to is when content marketers see themselves as writers, this can be kind of like the origin, the seed of this problem, I find, okay? So in a lot of situations, I've found that content marketers will refer to themselves as a writer. I'm a content marketer because I love to write. And it's like, cool, you can love to write, but that doesn't make you a content marketer. And sometimes people will even refer to themselves as a content writer and a content marketer, like interchangeably, right? But being a marketer is so much more than being a writer. Sure, be a good writer. Personally, I enjoy writing. It's great. But I don't think of myself as a writer. And I think personally, within the company, when we position ourselves as writers, as content people, we kind of do ourselves a disservice because we become a little bit of a commodity. And we just position ourselves as someone who creates an output rather than leads an outcome. Oh, that's a mic drop moment. That just came into my head. Are you someone who produces an output, or are you someone who creates an outcome? And as a content marketer, I think you've got to be responsible for outcomes. As a content writer, you're just producing text. And it might be great text, but it's still just an output, right? And linked to this is this whole sense of like content marketing being so tied to SEO today still, right? In so many cases I've seen on LinkedIn and even just people I talk to, you talk about content marketing and you immediately get into SEO. And sure, SEO is a big part of content marketing still today, but it's only one channel. And this thought that content marketing boils down to writing stuff that's going to get us to rank well in search, and that's it. No, it's so much more than that. And I think all of this, what I'm trying to say is all of this really ties into the idea of content being a production service for the company. And it's a myth. It's an idea and it's a myth and it's wrong. And so I kind of just have one thought on this and one kind of experience I've had as a content marketer. And that's in a previous role, a fantastic role I had in Paris. My manager talked to me, and I was content marketer in the team for this company. My manager, who was the CMO, talked to me about this, and it's always stuck with me. She said, instead of thinking about yourself as the guy who does content or the guy who writes things for the team and for the company, I want you to start thinking about yourself as someone who's responsible for messaging and positioning. And that changed the game for me, because thinking about myself and the value I could add in terms of learning about the company's positioning and messaging was just massive, because all of a sudden I became strategic. I was no longer just someone who was pumping stuff out for the sake of it, was just, having to hit a certain number of blog posts a week or some crap. But I was actually, through my writing and through what I was creating in content, learning about the audience, picking up cues on what worked and what didn't, and now positioning within that and what was going to work. So content is by far the best way to get that back and forth with your audience and start to understand, is our messaging actually resonating? Is our positioning correct? The content marketing manager, the content manager, is going to be one of the best people in the company to be kind of owning that space. So being able to think of myself as a kind of messaging and positioning person rather than a content person necessarily, or a writer necessarily, was a huge game changer for me, and something that I encourage all content marketers to start to think about themselves in that way. You're not just a writer. You might love writing, but you're not a writer. You are a strategist. You're about the messaging. You're about the positioning of the company. You have a strategic role, and it's time to step up and understand that. You know, a lot of people can write, but not everyone can think strategy. And a great content marketer is worth their weight in gold because they can think strategy and they can understand the business as a whole and be that person who is almost the guardian of the messaging and positioning and is able to refine it over time and do a fantastic job at taking the brand on a journey towards something that really resonates with the audience. So that's my thought today. Not a long thought. I'm going to turn around and head home. Not a long thought, but hopefully an interesting thought, that you're not part of a content factory. You're not just a writer. You're not just a producer. You're not just a content creator. You're a content strategist, and, you know, position yourself like that in the company and you're going to be so much better positioned to really deliver value in your company. So I hope you've enjoyed this quick episode, and we'll see you again next week for another brilliant episode on Content Marketing Commute with one of our expert guests. We'll see you then.